Welcome to episode 2 of the Pickleball Breakdown. 30 minutes, no fuss, pickleball analysis and strategy to improve your game, out every Wednesday at 4 Pacific. I'm your girl, Jilly B, joined by Scott C. Scott, today's Pickleball Breakdown is, drumroll please, it is the serve, a very hot topic right now. Last weekend, one of the pro tours was spotted making attempts to de-weaponize the serve by essentially decreasing the baseline length. Memes abounded, Scott, and jokingly people suggested just have a ball machine feed the serve. You know what? Have the refs throw the serve. So today we're going to be discussing where should you hit the serve? How high and hard should you hit the serve? Should you be missing your serve? Spoiler alert, yes, you should definitely be missing your serve, and how you can figure out which type of serve is most effective against your opponent. So for those of you that do not know, the genesis story of the serve in pickleball and why when you're on serve you have two players back is that being on serve should be a disadvantage. The game was designed so that being on serve is a disadvantage. So what happens in a world where the serve can be weaponized? Is that disadvantage now minimized? If so, how much? Does it lead to a deterioration of the integrity of the sport we all love? So Scott, first question for you, is the serve a weapon?
The serve is most definitely a weapon. I think the reason the tour is having, these conversations is there are so many matches where, 4 out of 11 of the points, end with the player, their backswing hits the fence, they miss the return board, and then they smack the fence, and it's kind of frustrating. So the product is suffering slightly because of, to me, firstly the size of the courts, but that's not really going to change. Most pickleball courts are going to be on an existing tennis court, and you have as much space as you're going to have. To me, there's two other contributing factors, and that is, the equipment and the skill of these players. It's like these players are getting so good. The serves are just getting harder and deeper, and the paddles are also getting better. So if the court size isn't going to change, and the players are only going to be getting better, so I think we need to look at. I don't think we need to de-weaponize the serve. I think we need to de-weaponize the weapon.
Yeah, that's really well said. I've talked to some MLP team owners who've been adamant, keep the serve big. And I think that's a big reason why we do see more lax serve rules at MLP versus on the tour. They think it's good for broadcast. So you mentioned the product suffering. They think, hey, I want to see big serves. And to which I responded to the team owner in question here. I said, you want to see the returner falling over as they make contact? Like, you think that looks more athletic?
Yeah, no, I mean, your point earlier that the serve, the returning team sort of was designed to have the advantage, and that doesn't seem to be the case a lot now. But
right.
Yeah, no, it's a tough spot. It's a tough spot.
So let me ask you this, for everyone at home who wants to improve their serve, let's start first with just some basics. And this is a little bit of a trick question. Where should we be aiming our serve? I
mean, the most important thing in a serve, in the quality of a serve, is depth. Whether you hit it hard or not, like if you can even hit it high and deep, it's like that player has to let it bounce, and it will bounce up a certain amount. And so if they can't make contact inside the baseline, well, then you're going to have, it's going to take them longer to move up to the kitchen. So depth is number one.
I say a little bit of a trick question because I think that it's opponent dependent. And I see too many of my students have just the same serve over and over. And I'm like, hey, did you ever throw a short one in there? A slice? A hard flat? Spinny deep?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of serve variety. I think a lot of my partners get a little frustrated with my serve variety because it does cost me some misses, because I think it's hard to go from. I think the reason people hit the same serve over and over is because once you kind of find a rhythm, serving is all rhythm. Once you find that rhythm, then you just keep doing that. It's hard to change the pace, change the location, and maintain the accuracy. But I do think it's a huge advantage to be able to have variety. So yes, hitting a deep serve, and then if you have the ability to hit like a short, wide serve and keep your opponent off balance,
Guessing.
I think that is a huge, good. That's another way to kind of weaponize your serve or make the returner uncomfortable.
Sure. So last episode 1, you mentioned a phrase, and I want t-shirts made, low dink tolerance. This episode, serve variety is the spice of life. How's that for a t-shirt?
Yeah, that is pretty good. That is like, these are nice bullet points for people to kind of have in their mind while they're playing. It's like sometimes you get so set in your ways. You're not always problem solving and thinking. And I don't know if neuroplasticity is the right word for this, but it is. It's like you want to be thinking while you're playing, and specifically, like what you just said, specifically about the opponent in front of you. I think way too many. I never like serving hard repeatedly to a very good tennis player, because now I'm just a ball machine for their excellent return.
Yeah.
And I think we had a match when we were in Salt Lake City, and one of the players you were playing against was crushing returns. Yeah. And then I think you and I talked during a timeout. It's like, hey, let's not give this person so much pace. And like let's keep it out of their wheelhouse. And it was I can only say that to someone who I'm confident can do it. And so I was confident in the moment you could change your serve, and you did. And I think you got a miss, and you made your thirds easier by making that change.
Yeah. So I completely agree with you. Deeper the better. So let's talk about height. Is it low and hard? Is it high and spinny? Do you care about trajectory as it's going deep?
In general, the lower you can hit it, then the harder you can hit it, and it'll stay in. Like I have trouble when I try to hit my serve hard. If I give it any sort of upward trajectory, it goes too far, and I miss deep. So there's such a fine line. But if I'm not going for pace and I'm just going for depth, then yes, now I'm doing just geometry, math, and I'm like, okay, well, if I want this deep, I want the apex of this serve to be at the net. Yep. So I can just hit it as high as I want. If the apex is there, it's going to land around the baseline, and I'm good.
I agree. My advice for anyone at home who wants to improve their serve is if you can hit it really hard, go ahead, bullet it, keep it low, try and get it as deep as you can. If you feel like you can't hit it very hard, I would say play around with the arc, play around with the shape. I'll give you a perfect example. I think on the female side of the tour, the player I have the most trouble returning serve from is Paris Todd. You can't see this on the live stream. You can't see this on YouTube or Tennis Channel. Her serve has so much arc. It also has speed, but it's got more arc than speed. And so when it hits deep, I've got to contend with it kicking up, almost like a tennis kick serve. So for those of us at home, do not be afraid to play with the arc of your serve. You might find that your opponent is a tennis player and they don't have a lot of trouble with a deep, low, hard serve, but you give them something that kicks up a little bit, man, who's not going to have trouble with that? You have any thoughts on that, Scott?
Oh, I agree that I do think she has an excellent serve. There's someone, I think Scott Fliegelman in the senior pro division, he has a serve where he really puts a lot of top and hits it hard, and it's like 6 feet over the net. It's way over the net, and then it is coming down with spin. Kind of a similar trajectory of that Paris has, where it's high and not as hard as like the hardest serve that's coming in, but it's hard enough with the spin, and it's got that with the pickleball. It's nice when you put spin on your serve, you get that late movement down, and if you get that late movement down at the baseline, it's trouble. It's trouble, especially if you're on some of these indoor courts where if you don't have room to kind of let it bounce and do its thing. If I have to take that thing on the rise, that is a tough shot. So I think the key to that serve of like controlling the the serve with height is, can you put enough spin on that ball?
Spin. Mm-hmm. No, I think that's really well said. Fun fact, before I knew you, Scott, and you were my coach, I would text Scott Fliegelman for advice. And Scott and I have played mixed pro split age. So it's a mouthful at nationals. I've done clinics at his beautiful facility, Boulder Pickleball Club. And fun fact, Scott Fliegelman has an amazing podcast called 4-0 to Pro. So if you're listening and you haven't checked it out, feel free to check it out.
Yeah,
I only take lessons from people named Scott is my point.
There's a lot of Scotts in senior pro pickleball. but when you described the good qualities of Paris's serve, it's like Scott serves what came to my mind, because that's the one. I don't get to play Paris very often, but I have to play Scott all the time. And when he has that high spinny serve going deep, it is a problem.
Totally. Let's talk about, I hear so often on our other podcast, we have a Dear Jilly B segment, and people can write in and ask questions. And I get this one maybe more than any other topic. I have the serve yips. How do I fix my serve yips? Scott, what would you say to someone struggling with, the Y word?
So I don't even want to admit this, but occasionally, like, I get nervous in matches. And it's like, I don't have 100% confidence that's like, in the serve. And I always kind of it's sort of like a golf tip where it's like, I pick an intermediate target. So I will look at a really specific spot on the net and go, just hit it medium pace, 2 feet over that spot. And then it's just safe.
That is such brilliant advice. And it took me forever to figure out that the key to playing in altitude, I had to play like 4 tournaments in altitude in 1 year and play them all so poorly to figure out if I just had leveraged my golf knowledge and chosen on my serve and on my ground strokes an intermediate target and then hit really aggressively to that intermediate target, it calibrates your entire game. And I just love that advice. And I've never considered giving that advice to my students. So thank you for sharing that. Something I will advise my students on when they have the Y word problem is I'll first just ask, do you have a consistent miss? So kind of goes back to golf, right? Like a lot of what we're trying to do in golf is create a one-way miss. And so I think often with the yips, there is not a consistent miss. But an exercise I will give my students is give me your loosest arm, like an elephant trunk, and I'd like you to see if you can hit 10 balls into the fence in a row. Because I just want them to feel freedom and a lack of tension. And I think from that foundation, we can build back a stable serve. Do you like that advice?
For sure. It's like when you give someone permission to miss, then it will free them up. And then once you get freed up, then you start getting the feel back and the rhythm. It's like a good serve has good rhythm. It's like that's one of the fun parts of watching the pros play is like there's certain people, like I enjoy watching Federico serve. Like he has his routine. It's the same every time. He rips it every time. And it's like, my goodness, how does he, it seems like such low margins. How does he hit it that hard every time and make it? And it's because his rhythm and his timing is on. And it's like I kind of think to myself, is there a way that I can kind of steal the rhythm that he has and make it work for me?
Your serve is big enough. I don't want to return any bigger from you. Please don't work on it.
Yeah, well, you've only seen my serve in practice. It's in practice. I let it go. In matches.
Oh, you have a driving range serve to continue with the golf analogies. I didn't know that. No, but I love what you're saying about Federico. This notion of freedom, rhythm. I would add the word violence to it, right? This lack of control. This just total and utter freedom. And how you know someone has too much tension in their arm is when I give them that drill to go try and hit 10 balls in a row to the back of the fence. They can't, because your arm can't act as a whip if you're not allowing it to. If you have that tension, it's almost impossible to hit the back of the fence with tension in your arm. So I love that analogy to Federico and this notion of freedom and this rhythm. And you talk about missing the serve, Scott. So What do we say to a student of ours that comes up to us and says, I like my serve. I never miss my serve.
Yeah, there's a few pro players that have that strategy too. I've never seen Tyler Loong miss a serve. And it's his philosophy. It's like, I'm going to make every serve, and you can't really, if I don't give you too much pace, you can't give me too much pace back, and then I'll work my way in. And it's like, okay, well, that can work for some people, but I think I would recommend people try different things. And it's like, if you never miss it, I would kind of question, really, and what is your rate of getting to the kitchen? Right? Because if you're just
great question.
If you're just putting it in, if you're just kind of throwing it over, putting it in play, great. But if the returns are coming back aggressively, and then you're probably hitting a lot of third shot lobs too. So it's like, if it's, just because you're making the serve doesn't mean it's helping you. And so I would want to see, okay, it's not so much just the serve, but it's like, how is it going with your team on your thirds?
That is such a fantastic point. And one thing I've been feeling lately in the pro game is that one of the most important shots is the fourth shot. And the fourth shot is really a function of what? It's a function of the quality of our returns. And so a concept I explore with my students is there are really two different strategies happening in one game of pickleball. In pickleball side out scoring, there's winning points, and then there's the prevention, right, of points being won against you. And how do we prevent points from being won against us, which is so important in a game to 15. I get so many students who are like, yeah, I'm playing a tournament, but it's one game to 11, win by one, or it's one game to 15, win by one. And I always say, look, don't worry about winning points. I know you're going to do that. Let's focus on really good returns and really good fourths to prevent them from winning points. Do you agree that where the game is going, the return and the fourth, they're becoming some of the most important shots?
Yeah, it's definitely it's kind of a stress relief to side someone out easily, right? If you hit a quality return, get in there and then hit an aggressive fourth and just you're preventing them from getting to the kitchen, right? Yeah. And it's just nice to having quick side outs by solid return, and then hit that aggressive fourth, and make them hit really tough shots. Then you get the ball right back, and now we're serving with a little bit of momentum and confidence. And so it's a huge shot to have. There was one other thing that I wanted to talk about the serve, though. When you talked about serve variety, I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's like, I kind of had a thought. And I was watching Jesse and Hayden play this weekend against Wyatt and Bobby Oshiro. And Bobby Oshiro has this serve on the right side where she confidently hits it, curls it short and wide. And so Hayden is out there 3 or 4 feet off the sideline, having to hit the return and then hustle back over to unwind the stack. And it was like, and then it made their thirds so much easier. There's just so much less, like, the stress was on the returner, not on the person hitting the thirds. Usually that's reversed. And I just wanted to kind of point out that when you're serving, you can set up a more makeable or an easier third if you can kind of confidently put that serve in the right spot. If you get your opponent scrambling and you pre-plan, I'm going to serve here and it's going to leave this spot open for my third. It's amazing how running plays like that can get you over one of those little stretches where, gosh, we're not getting to the kitchen. You see so many matches where someone's got a lead, they stop making thirds, and now that lead's just gone. So kind of a way to get yourself back on track is, and I kind of tell my partners this, I'm like, hey, I'm giving you the green light. Go for this big serve here. It'll open up this shot for our third. Let's do this.
So smart. And if you saw me shaking my head earlier when you started talking about Bobby Oshiro, I have had to personally witness her serving prowess throughout this year on the APP tour, including a missed return of mine on game point against her and Will Howells in the semifinal match. They ended up going to the gold. Scott, she put that serve on the baseline. And what she can do with her serve is a thing of beauty.
Yeah, she has hers. Like, I think it has similar qualities to how you described Paris's, where it has a lot of top and a lot of late movement. And then, but if she's also changing spots and can kind of pull it wide, if she can put it deep and pull it wide, then what happens as the returner? She's in your head.
I know.
It's like, so where do I need to stand? Is this one deep? But I gotta be ready for the wide one. And then now it's like, well, I'm not as comfortable.
We'll be sure to send her, as she'll be one of the very first recipients of the shirt. The serve variety is the spice of life. Bobby, from me to you. I'm happy you brought this serve variety back up again. When I was training at what we jokingly call the Julie Johnson Academy in South Florida, with JW, Gabe Tardio, and Georgia and Millie Rain, I was lucky enough to have a day with them. And Julie, at the end of our kind of training camp, said, okay, we're going to hit serves. And she had targets, cones on the court, short and wide, like you just said. She had one on the tee and then deep back corner. And I love watching the habits of some of the best players in the world and what they're doing day in and day out. And I'm obsessed with drills we can do alone and leveraging cones, a hat, whatever you have, putting it on the court and practicing your serve. You'd be shocked, I think, if you're listening at home, at how many free points you could pick up practicing these different spots.
Yeah, no, practicing, when I was talking about serve variety earlier and how it's like, to me, my serve variety causes me to miss a little more than I would like. The reason is that I don't practice enough. If I practiced my serve more and specifically practice, hit this one deep, hit this target, now hit this one short and wide, and be able to change pace, but with a high confidence that it's going in. When I'm playing a match, typically, I get kind of zoned in on the rhythm of hitting it hard. But when the thought goes through my mind, a nice short wide one would be great here. Yeah. How practiced am I at pulling that off when it matters? And that comes down to, how often, how many reps, and how recently did I practice this? And if I have, then I will, it's like, if I practice it, I will have confidence. And if I have confidence, I am way more likely to pull it off.
Totally agree. And it's not just spots, it's spin. And I will never forget when I was playing Anna Lee Waters and Catherine Parenteau for, one of the 4 times I've played them this year. And we were in Mesa, Arizona, and Anna Lee was demoing her crazy new serve where she started at the video board, ran kind of didn't jump in the air because it's illegal to have 2 feet in the air at contact, kind of jumps, side spins the ball, kind of falls over into the ball with this crazy side spin trajectory. And she was just being playful on live TV against, me and Christine Maddox and toying and playing with this side spin serve. So for me, I love the side spin serve. I don't think I'm athletic enough to figure out how to run into it like she was. And since then she's abandoned it. So maybe she's done playing with it. But if someone has a heavy slice, I like to throw in a low slice serve. Let them go slice a slice. So I think it's important too. Don't be afraid if you're listening at home to throw in some slices, throw in some top, throw in flat, and don't be afraid to miss. So Scott, we talked about that. Let's give everyone listening at home some freedom to miss, but can we quantify that? Is it 1 a game? Is 3 a game too many? Can you put a number on this?
So that's a great question. And we got this question at our last MLP event where we had a player who was serving big, and it was especially, we knew going in, this court is very tight, so returns will be tough. So if you can serve big, that's fine. And he's like, well, are you going to, what if I miss? And I'm like, here's, if your big serve is winning, 2 or 3 out of 4 points, and then you miss 1 out of 4, I'll take that ratio, right? It's like if you're winning 3 out of 4, then I don't care if you miss 4 serves if it's so big that the ones that go in win. So that's kind of how I determine it. Is this serve that I'm putting in winning me points? If so, keep going for it. Or it's like, is it not winning me points and now I'm just hitting it hard out of desperation? Then it's like, well, now these misses aren't really getting you anything. So it's like everything. It's a bit conditional. But if without kind of mentally doing that math during the match, it's like missing at least one, as long as you're going for it. If it's a miss of being aggressive, it's like totally cool with that. But yes, once you get to 3, you miss 3 serves in one game. Then I would question that. I would say after 2. I mean, if I miss 2 serves, I get pretty conservative after that.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. I think that's a really good point, that it's conditional, because can you quantify or try to how many times it's giving you a really short return and you're hitting a great third off of that, or you've increased your kitchen arrival. Like it's totally conditional. I love that. So who are some players? We've talked about Bobby on the women's side, Paris on the women's side. Who are some other players, whether on the women's or men's side, that listeners at home could maybe go and watch some footage of to get some inspiration?
Good question. I think it depends on the type of serve that you want. It's like when I think about the guys who have big serves right now, I mean, James has a huge serve. Hayden has a pretty big serve. And what I like about the way those two serve is they have a very small swing.
I can't understand it. I literally cannot understand it. As you were listing their names, I was like, our listeners at home are going to go watch them and go, it looks like nothing. How are they doing it?
Yeah, their paddle barely goes behind it, and then they just throw. And I think the reason they do that is those guys can generate so much power. If they took a big swing, they wouldn't be able to control it. But it's like, if I only swing from 6 inches behind the ball, I can swing as hard as I can, and I'm not going to miss.
So it's like the 2-inch punch, the 2-inch punch.
And the smaller the swing, like the more accurate you're going to be, right? So if they aim for this really low over the net intermediate target with a small swing, they're probably going to be more accurate with that. So those two guys, just a couple of examples of kind of what I think of a new way of serving hard is like with a short backswing.
Super interesting. What about, controversial question for you. How much should our listeners at home on the rec courts or at the local club, how much should they be tossing the ball on their serve?
Like, what should their toss look like?
Yeah, I mean, should they be deckle barring their serve?
It's like personal ethics. Yeah, if I buy something at the store and they give me the wrong change back, and I know I will give it back to them. I am not going to take advantage just because you can't do math. It's like if I step, I used to have a bad habit of stepping forward and my toe would hit the baseline and it would be a football.
I think this is a fair question because you have MLP with one set of rules, right? Like I'm serving like way higher than I would on the PPA or the APP in MLP. Part of that is they change the rules because they want you to do that. They think that's more entertaining. So are players at home, is it okay for them to follow MLP rules? Is it ethical for them to follow APP rules? Is it just USAP rules, which I think are APP rules? Is it PPA rules? You have 3 different sets of rules at the professional level. What set of rules should everyone be adhering to, if any at all? USA Pickleball?
For regular amateur players, I would say USA Pickleball because those are the rules. When and if you play a tournament, it's like I think those are the rules you would follow. I would also like to follow the intent of
the spirit
rules,
of the game, the spirit.
Yeah, like it's an underhand serve. It's like the paddle needs to be kind of on the way up. The paddle needs to be below the wrist. All of those rules are designed so that it is not that offensive of a shot.
Yeah.
And then people, it's like pros, of course. It's like they're going to try to push that to the farthest extreme boundary they can, as as they should. And that's kind of partly where we're kind of getting to that point where has it become too much? It's like, but for amateurs, it's like I would stick with the USAP rules, because I think those are what are going to govern most of the tournaments. And it's also, within the spirit of the game. I would go there. But I think also the thing you said about MLP, where they changed the rule because they want these aggressive serves.
Yep.
I don't think that's why they changed it. The reason they changed it, what I heard, is because now they don't have to officiate it's easier for them to officiate what's legal or not legal. When the new rule came around, where it's like, okay, it's got to be, you can't lift the ball, and it's got to be below the hip, and it's like all that. They don't know where everyone's hip is, and they're like, ugh, I can't do this. Let's just go away with it, and then just let it be a free for all. Then the problem, it's not on us.
Fun fact, Chris and I were going to make shirts last year that said, show me your belly button. Because as you just hinted, the only way to determine if a serve is legal is, where's your belly button, right? And everyone's torso is built differently. Show me your belly button shirts. Maybe they'll make a comeback.
Yeah, no, I think Deckel had his belly button raised just for pickleball.
Deckel had his belly button raised just for pickleball. I love that, Scott. I think you're totally right. All right, so Scott, we're at about our 30-minute mark for all things serve, but I'd hate to leave our listeners without a little info on the return. Can you hit us with like a 60-second wisdom bomb on all things returns?
For amateur players, the basics really are hit that return as deep as possible and follow it in. I think the number one thing that people don't do is they don't get in behind it every time often enough. And so it's like, you want to hit that, unlike the serve where variety is important, with return, it's like depth is even more important on the return, I think, than it is on the serve. So it's like I would stick with depth being the most important thing, running in behind it being, kind of the equally or second most important thing. And then kind of working on, if you're practicing, it's like the rhythm of doing that. Like when I'm working with you pros on, hey, how does my return look? The rhythm of the footwork moving through it, hitting the ball with your body weight transfer going forward into the shot. It's like, I would kind of say that would be my technique tip or my swing thought for how should I be hitting the return? I would say those three things are kind of the big ones.
Could not agree more with all of that. The number one mistake I see when it comes to returns from my students are they're standing too close to the baseline. They're doing this because they want to run in and get to the kitchen as quickly as possible. But what they don't understand is when you stand that close to the baseline, your first move when the serve is coming deep actually has to be backwards. And the amount of effort it takes to reverse your own momentum ends up losing you time. And that's why you're slow to the kitchen, actually. It's because you're not far enough away from the ball. You're not far enough behind the baseline. So to everyone listening, there's a reason the pros stand at the video board. There's a reason championship courts are built bigger with more room. So if you're struggling with your returns, try standing uncomfortably far back. You'll know you're at the perfect distance when you feel a little discomfort. And then try doing what Scott said, working with your good footwork to get away from the ball, around the ball, and then run through the ball. It's going to feel weird. It should. Right, Scott? It's going to feel really, really weird.
Yes, if you are used to being stationary and static when you're hitting the ball every time, moving through it while you hit is going to feel different. If you come from tennis, maybe you've been taught that's wrong, unless you're hitting, an approach shot specifically. It's like, you're not really, you probably don't hit a lot of balls in tennis moving through it. Well, this is different than that. So yes, if that's probably the most common thing I see is people who are totally static while they hit the ball. They admire it. Yes. And then they kind of make their way in. That's probably the number one thing I see from amateurs, the mistake they make with their return.
Agree. I call that hitting a return and smoking in the lobby. They're just admiring it, having a cigarette in the lobby. Well, Scott, I loved this episode on the serve. As always, I learn so much from you, and I cannot wait for the pickleball breakdown next week. Do you know what the topic is going to be next week, Scott? I don't.
I mean, I think one of the most important shots in the game, the return of serve, is where we're going to go next week, and that is you're going to want to tune into that, because there's, it's the worst mistake you can make is missing a return. So we're going to talk about how to not do that, and how you can really control a match if you've got a good return.
Love it. Well, we'll see you next week. So, Scott, your mom is in town. On a scale of 1 to 10, how big of a mama's boy are you? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for her visit?
Not exactly mama's boy. No, she probably wishes I would call more. So I think this is why, like, her visiting me is important, because I don't see her as much as she would like. But it's fine. We're gonna. Since I've moved to Orange County, I've like really been enjoying the food down here. So I'm gonna like take her to a restaurant that I like, so she can, kind of try out the Orange County food, which is better than the Santa Clarita food.